I found them huddled beneath a concrete bridge, drenched by the relentless rain. The young woman, clutching her feverish baby boy to her chest, her thin frame trembling from the cold. This wasn't just any stranger, it was my granddaughter Emily. For years, I believed the betrayal from my son Derek had caused the deepest wound. The theft of our fortune, the years of isolation, the silence that followed. I never imagined that one day, I'd find myself standing in the mud under that overpass, my designer coat soaked through, staring at my own flesh and blood in the coldest of circumstances. "Emily Hawthorne?" I asked, my voice barely rising above the storm. She looked up, eyes wary, protective of her child. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice filled with suspicion. "My name is Olivia Hawthorne," I said, kneeling down to her level, careful not to frighten her further. "I know your father told you I was gone, but I am your grandmother." The shock in her eyes was undeniable, but as she glanced down at her son, the weight of my words began to sink in. In that moment, I knew everything was about to change. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Like, share and subscribe to this channel to get more uplifting stories about elderly women and men who have been abandoned, betrayed, and mistreated by family members but still got back on their feet with a happy ending. Now back to the story. I never thought I'd find myself here. Alone, isolated, living in the cold, sterile silence of my mansion. Years had passed since my son, Derek, betrayed me and took everything. Our fortune, our family, and any shred of warmth I had left. That betrayal had turned my life into a shadow of what it once was. My mansion, once filled with laughter, now echoed with the ghosts of a life long lost. My wealth, my accomplishments, none of it mattered in the end. I had everything and yet I had nothing. It wasn't until that cold, impersonal report arrived that something within me shifted. I had been living in my own emotional fortress, refusing to engage with anything or anyone. But this report, this cold, factual document, changed everything. It was about Emily Hawthorne, my granddaughter, someone I hadn't seen in years. The report was stark, almost clinical in its description. It detailed Emily's desperate circumstances, living under a highway bridge, drenched in rain, with her sick baby boy Noah. My heart tightened as I read those words. How could I not have known? My flesh and blood, my own granddaughter, was out there, struggling. And I had done nothing to help. The pain in her situation hit me like a physical blow, something I couldn't ignore. My eyes lingered on Noah's name. His condition was urgent, a severe respiratory infection. What had happened to this little boy? What had I done to allow this to happen? For years, I had avoided my emotions, burying them beneath the business empire I'd built. I'd shut out the world after Derek's betrayal, clinging to the shell of my success. But here I was, faced with the reality of my bloodline's suffering, and there was no denying it anymore. I was still a grandmother. Emily was still my granddaughter, and Noah was still my family. Sitting in my pristine office, staring out over the city's skyline, I felt the walls around me crack. All those years of emotional detachment were falling apart in a moment. For the first time in ages, I felt something stir within me. Something real, something painful, but something I couldn't ignore. I had to find them. Had to help. I couldn't just sit here anymore, continuing to live in the shadow of my past mistakes. The mansion, the wealth, the coldness of it all, it no longer mattered. My blood, my family was out there suffering. What kind of person was I, if I just let that continue? Well, I couldn't let this child, my granddaughter, and her baby live in such conditions. I would find them. I didn't know if they would trust me. After all, I had been absent for so long. But that didn't matter anymore. I would make it right. I rose from my desk and walked over to the window, looking out at the city below. The decision was made. I had to find Emily and Noah, to offer them a chance at something better, something that wasn't just survival. And I would do whatever it took to make sure they knew they weren't alone. They were family. They were mine. And I would not let them suffer any longer. I didn't expect to find them here. Under the concrete bridge, drenched and vulnerable, they were huddled together as if the world had forgotten them. The storm was relentless, the rain coming down in sheets, soaking through my clothes as I stepped out of the car. The sound of rushing traffic above was a constant hum, but it seemed so far away from this broken place. The stench of damp earth, wet cardboard, and decay filled my nose as I approached. And then I saw her. Emily. My granddaughter. The one I had abandoned all these years ago, or so she probably thought. She looked so much like her mother, so fragile, so worn down by the world, but there was a fire in her eyes, even as she clutched her feverish son to her chest. The baby Noah was barely more than a few months old, his cries piercing the air, and it broke my heart to see him like that. I hesitated for a moment, standing there watching them. I had made the decision to find them, to offer them something better, but now, seeing them so vulnerable, I wasn't sure how to approach. I had no idea how Emily would react. I had been absent for so long, a ghost in her life, a stranger she never knew. I stepped forward, trying to steady my breath. "Emily," I called softly. She looked up, startled, her body tense as she instinctively pulled Noah closer to her, her eyes scanning me for any hint of danger. The fear was clear in her gaze, and it only took a second for her to assess me, to decide I wasn't a threat, but also someone she couldn't trust. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion, barely above a whisper over the sound of the rain. I swallowed, the words sticking in my throat. Had to say it. I had to tell her the truth, even if it felt like I was betraying all the distance I had kept for so long. "I'm your grandmother," I said. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I watched her face, searching for any sign of recognition, but all I saw was confusion, doubt. "You what?" she whispered, shaking her head. "My grandmother." "No, that's not possible." The skepticism in her eyes hurt, more than I expected. The years of neglect, the walls we had both built. How could I ask her to trust me now, after everything? But the baby's cries were louder than any doubts, his small body trembling in her arms. "Noah needs help," I said, my voice softening. "He's sick. I can take you somewhere safe, get him the medical care he needs. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Emily looked down at her son, her face softening for a moment, but the uncertainty never left her eyes. She was trapped, caught between the desperation of her situation and the doubt I could see in her heart. She glanced around, as if weighing her options. The rain was coming down harder now, and I could see Emily shivering, Noah's small frame shaking too. I didn't wait for her to make a decision. "I know you don't trust me, but I'm offering you a way out," I said, the urgency in my voice rising. "You and Noah can stay with me. We'll help. You'll have shelter, medical care, and a chance at something better. No strings attached." I could see her wavering. She didn't want to believe me, but what other choice did she have? The reality of her situation was too raw to ignore, and Noah's cries filled the space between us. Finally, after what felt like forever, she nodded, though I could still see the uncertainty in her eyes. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay, I'll go with you." I breathed a sigh of relief, though it was still unclear whether she was accepting my offer out of trust or desperation. Either way, I had her, and I had to make sure I didn't let her down again. As I helped her and Noah into the car, the rain continued to pour, but it felt like a new chapter was beginning. The days that followed were a blur of quiet moments, small victories and painful revelations. At first, there was a distance between Emily and me, a space neither of us knew how to bridge. She had lived through things I couldn't even begin to comprehend, and yet, despite the rawness of her past, she still had a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She was still so young, only in her 20s, but she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. As I watched her tend to Noah, I saw the same determination in her that I once had, that I thought I had lost forever. She was a mother, and that meant everything to her. She'd protect Noah at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing everything else. I saw her fight for him with every ounce of strength she had left, and I admired that in her. I hadn't seen someone fight for something in so long, not since Spencer had fought for our family, before everything fell apart. Emily's life had been a nightmare, one she couldn't escape. There were the failed relationships, the abandoned promises, and the relentless struggle to survive. And somewhere in the mix, her own family had let her slip through the cracks, leaving her with no safety net, no backup, not even a hint of compassion. Her parents, my son Derek and his wife, had betrayed her, just as they had done to me. It made sense now. Why she didn't trust me, why she was so guarded. But I wasn't like them. Or so I hoped. I didn't want to live the rest of my life regretting that I had failed to reach out to her sooner. The more I heard about her life, the more I saw myself in her. The same pride, the same strength, the same brokenness. For the first time in years, I felt something stirring inside me. A desire to help, to heal, and to mend what had been torn apart for far too long. I wasn't ready to let my family slip away again. It wasn't easy for her at first. She was reluctant to accept my help, and who could blame her? After all, I was a stranger to her, even if we shared blood. But I insisted. I needed to do something, anything, to show her that I was here for her. So, I offered her a job at Hawthorne Enterprises, a fresh start. I could see the hesitation in her eyes as she looked at the offer. She had no idea if she could trust me, if this was just another attempt to control her life. But I was offering more than just a job. I was offering a chance to rebuild her future, one step at a time. Watching her rise from the bottom, despite all the odds, was nothing short of inspiring. She worked tirelessly, sometimes too hard, but I knew that this job was her lifeline. It wasn't just about the work. It was about regaining her confidence, proving to herself that she was capable of more than just surviving. She didn't take anything for granted, and neither did I. As the weeks passed, I began to realize that it wasn't just Emily who was finding herself. I was too. The emptiness that had filled my house for so long started to fade away. No longer was it a cold, lonely mansion filled with memories of betrayal. With each passing day, Emily and Noah filled the house with life. I had forgotten what it felt like to have laughter, joy, and even the occasional mess in my home. But it felt good, really good. The walls I had built around my heart started to crumble. I realized that I no longer wanted to be isolated, to live in a shell of my former self. I wanted to be a part of Emily's life, to truly connect with her. I began to listen to her, to hear her stories without judgment, without the walls I had spent so many years constructing. Slowly but surely, we began to form a real relationship, one based on respect, trust, and understanding. Emily wasn't just my granddaughter anymore. She was a part of me, a reflection of what I could have been if I hadn't let my past consume me. And Noah brought a joy to my life that I never thought I would experience again. His little hands reaching out to me, his innocent giggles, it was like a balm for the wounds I had carried for so long. I didn't know what the future held for us, but for the first time in years I had hope. We were healing together. The moment Derek and Margaret walked through the doors of my office, everything inside me froze. I could feel my pulse quicken, my stomach tightening as old wounds reawakened. After all these years, I didn't expect to ever see them again. The audacity, the sheer nerve they had to walk into my life as if nothing had happened, was staggering. I had spent decades locking away my emotions, burying the betrayal of my son so deep that sometimes I wondered if I had ever truly forgiven him. But now, there they stood. Derek, my own flesh and blood, the man who had stolen my fortune and shattered my world, and Margaret, the woman who had stood by and let it happen. They thought they could just waltz back into my life and reclaim what they felt was their due. They didn't realize how much they had underestimated me. I had spent years living in the shadow of their actions, but I wasn't that woman anymore. Not after everything I had been through. Not with Emily and Noah in my life now. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and looked at them both. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended, but it didn't matter. They deserved every ounce of it. Derek opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. "Do you really think you can come back here after everything you did? You took from me, Derek. You took everything. And for what? So you could live a lie, hiding behind false wealth and stolen money." He flinched, but it wasn't enough. I needed him to know how deeply he had hurt me. How deep his betrayal had run. You and your wife destroyed everything. I lost everything because of your greed. My life, my peace, my family. I paused, letting my words sink in, watching the guilt that flickered in his eyes. And now you think you can come back here and claim what's left. You are not welcome here. You are not welcome in my life anymore. I could see the guilt shifting into defensiveness, but I didn't care. My anger was well earned, and I wasn't going to let him walk all over me again. The years of silence and isolation from him had hardened me in ways he would never understand. You took from me, Derek. You took my trust, my love, and my family. And now you think you can waltz back in like nothing ever happened. You think because you're family, the same family who turned its back on me all those years ago, that you deserve something from me. Margaret stood behind him, looking at me with an almost pleading expression. She knew, just as well as Derek did, how much damage they had done. But she was as much to blame as he was. Her silence all those years, her acceptance of his lies, it was all a part of the destruction. I told you I would never forgive you, I continued, my voice trembling slightly, but with conviction. And I meant it. I can't change what happened, but I sure as hell won't let you manipulate me into feeling guilty for the choices I made. I've built a life for myself again, Derek. And I won't let you destroy it. I won't let you hurt Emily and Noah too. The anger that had been brewing inside me boiled over, and I stepped forward, my hands trembling with the force of my emotions. You will never be a part of my life again. You will never get near Emily or Noah. I will protect them with everything I have. I watched Derek's expression shift from indignation to something darker, but I stood my ground. Get out, I said, my voice steely, and don't come back. You've made your choices and so have I. You are no longer my family. And I will make sure you stay out of our lives forever. There was a long silence, and then, as expected, they left, Derek's pride and anger trailing behind him. But as I watched them go, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. I had stood firm. I had finally confronted my past, and I had done so with the strength that Emily and Noah had brought back into my life. They were my future now, not Derek and Margaret. And nothing, no one was going to change that. With Derek and Margaret out of the picture, life began to settle into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. It was as if the final remnants of the past had been swept away, leaving space for something new. A future that was no longer clouded by betrayal, regret, or heartache. Emily's career at Hawthorne Enterprises continued to thrive, and I watched her with a sense of pride I never thought I would feel. The young woman I had found under that bridge was now a force to be reckoned with. Strong, intelligent, and capable. Noah too had flourished. His once frail body grew stronger with each passing day. The doctor had been right. With the right care and attention, Noah was a healthy, happy child. He would never know the kind of hardship his mother had endured, and for that I would be forever grateful. Watching him run through the halls of the mansion, his laughter ringing in the air, was the soundtrack to the peace I had longed for. The Hawthorne legacy, once tainted by the actions of my son, was no longer a symbol of loss and betrayal. Emily had taken the reins, and I had no doubt that she would carry it forward with the same integrity and strength she had shown since the day I met her. She was no longer just my granddaughter. She was the embodiment of a new chapter, a new beginning. I could see Spencer in her. The way she carried herself, the way she worked tirelessly to make sure every decision was made with care. He would be proud of her, of that I was certain. I knew deep down that my time in the company had come to an end. I had spent so many years managing, controlling, and overseeing every detail of Hawthorne Enterprises, but it was time for someone else to step in. It was time for Emily to take the reins fully. I had to trust that the legacy we had built would continue under her leadership. She had earned it after all. I stepped aside, knowing that it was the right decision, even if it wasn't the easiest one. And then there was James, Emily's son, my great-grandson. When I first met him, I had no idea what to expect. He was a stranger, a young man carrying the weight of a family's history he didn't fully understand. But in the time since, I had come to see in him the man I had always hoped he would be. A man of strength, compassion, and capability. He was a natural leader, and I could see the way Emily's eyes softened when she looked at him. Together, they formed the family I had always wanted to be a part of. A family built not on betrayal and broken promises, but on love, resilience, and hope. The mansion that had once been a symbol of sorrow, echoing with the ghosts of the past, was now a home full of laughter, warmth, and new beginnings. The walls that once felt like they were closing in on me now seemed to open up, embracing the family that I had longed for. It was no longer just my home. It was theirs too. As I sat on the balcony that overlooked the grounds, watching Noah run after Emily with a joyful grin on his face, I realized how far we had come. From the darkness of betrayal to the light of a new beginning, we had found our way back to each other. And for the first time in a long while I could say with all honesty that I had finally found peace.